Welcome to Global Beehive and expert interviews. Today we have the pleasure of having Henrik Blomgren here, and he's an expert and professor focusing on digitalization, business model, and transformation. Thank you so much, Henrik, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You have a fantastic and interesting background and specializing in digitalization. Would you say a few words about yourself?
I would explain myself as a typical in-between person. I've been in academia and outside academia and having a lot of jobs outside academia. And since, roughly speaking, 10 years, I'm back in academia. Simply because I'm heavily interested in what's happening. And in particular, I like to combine the idea of superficial pictures of what's happening and hands-on observations. I think you have a tendency of you find either or people that give you statistics or people that give you funny cases and no connection.
But what I understand is that you come from a more mechanical engineering background and
Yes.
then somehow found your path into digitalization. That must be a very interesting path to follow.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not unique. I'm a mechanical engineer from the beginning, that's correct. By birth, small company. But I mean, gradually things change. To me, it's taken something like 2.5 decades. And nowadays, I made a decision something like 10 years ago. I put the rest of my life into this, and that's it. Which to me is rather radical concerning what I've done previously. But it was a safe bet. I don't have a problem of spending my time with something.
No,
it's growing.
Yeah, but you have a really interesting academic background and really looking at the progress of digitalization, especially during the last 15 years, and also very much focusing on the music industry, trying to understand the phenomenon of Spotify and other these online streaming services. Would you give a little bit about background or introduction to that research and a little bit what your conclusions are?
Well, once I wanted to become a pop star. That was one reason. I never made it.
Well,
it was close, but I never made it. So I like music. To me, music is an example. I'm actually not that heavily interested in music as such. It's a great example. Like this one. Something like 20 years ago, most of us, at least me, used CD and vinyl records, right? And how much did we pay for that? Well, in my case, I paid something like 30 euro per month. I bought like 2 records per month. Nowadays, I pay something like 10 euro. And previously, I had something like 500 records back home. And that's like 5,000 songs. And now I have 30 million songs. So over a period of 20 years, I've managed to get 30 million songs for 10 euro today, compared to 5,000 songs for 30 euro 20 years ago. And that's a tremendously big difference. And it's a great example showing what's happening. And if you just chew on that for a second, you could realize that if we just change industry structures, we could produce an MBA, for instance, in half time compared to today for half the cost. Or we could double the quality of healthcare with 50% of the cost. And that's what's actually digitalization is contributing with. Academics nowadays, they describe it in terms of Moore's law and its consequences. But the interesting thing, this is not a joke. It's not a joke. And that's tremendously interesting because it means that, yeah, music made it. We will see this in other industries too. And that's fundamentally radical. Well, no, sorry, did I interrupt?
Why do you think it happened in the music industry? Why didn't it?
Because it was easier to make it in the music industry.
Yeah.
It just, there are several reasons why it was easier to make in the music industry than in other industries. So it's just a matter of time. We will see it in other industries too, of course. And there's several reasons why it was easier in the music industry. One is customer preferences change faster in music. If I would do this in healthcare, it would take a little bit of longer time. So it's natural. Everything is actually rather natural, but still mind-blowing. And then, of course, one reason why it happened in the music industry was that a bunch of entrepreneurial people with tech in their head, decided to do it. So the question is someone else deciding to do this in education, car industry, pulp and paper, healthcare, you name it, consulting. Oh, that's a great one. It will happen. That's the funny thing. It will.
I actually read a paper from a World Economic Forum where they talk very much about the democratization of technology and also the entrepreneurial spirit that is sort of flowing in the world at the moment. And that's sort of is one of the drivers for this kind of disruptions. Is that your view as well?
Yeah. Have you heard the saying that this is not a smartphone, it's a moonlander? I guess you heard that one saying, yeah. I actually literally went to Washington to knock on the moonlander because I wanted to get a feeling of it. Would you dare flying to the moon with only this one to make you feel safe? But the funny thing is, this is not a moonlander anymore. It's more like a supercomputer.
Yeah.
So yes, it's democratized in the sense that we all have it in our pockets. We all have a moonlander in the pocket. That's cool. Unusually cool.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's democratized. That's a good way to see it.
Yeah. But if you look at Spotify and their journey itself, I think that you once said that when they asked customers in the 90s how they wanted to consume music, it was still that they wanted the CD. But something changed very rapidly with the new streaming services. How come customers change the behavior so quickly? And what is your view on that?
It's actually worse than that. It's actually worse than that. When the Global Music Association did ask people, 2006, which is the same year as Spotify was founded, the same answer was the result. Well, the thing is, most people are not able to imagine things that doesn't exist. And this is the reason. But when it does exist, and we get it in our hand, we can imagine it. So, and the iPhone is a good case of that. Same with Spotify. If I would have called you like 25 years ago and said, hey, I got a black box here. It's going to make you connected everywhere. Would you like to have it? You would say, no. But when I give it to you, when I put the iPhone in your hand, you would say, yeah, I love it. And that's the reason why customer preferences change. We are stuck with the perception of things that we do have, meaning I want to keep my records. But when I get a streaming service in my head, I quickly change my preferences. And that's the reason why you should not, absolutely not, make market research. Absolutely not. That's fundamentally dangerous. And this is in all these cases. It happens again and again and again. Would you like something else? No, I would not. But then after a while, when you stumble on it and you get it in your hand, you suddenly change your preferences. And it's so fun how fast this happens. Then suddenly you forget your own opinion. You don't see your preferences changing, but they do.
But what it's saying here is that in 2006, Spotify was launched, and also the iPhone, I think, was launched around the same time.
Yes.
Was there something in that era, the 2006, 2010, that was quite special was it a bigger maturity of digital maturity among people? Why did it not take place earlier? Why did it not take place in the early 90s?
Well, it actually did. but not in such a such a big extent. Actually, you could say, what did we have before the streaming services? We had iTunes and etc. But iTunes was not the first one, and the iPod was not the first one. It's been cooking for decades. It actually started when you got the CD, because then music went from analog to digital. So I think a way to say it is like water. It doesn't matter if it rains a little bit on my street, but if it suddenly rains a lot, it's going to move. It's going to change things fundamentally. That's what happened. So it's actually fundamentally interesting that it was Spotify who took the market. It could have been anyone. There were hundreds working on the same thing at the same time. So if we would have looked on it seriously at that point in time, we would have realized that this will happen. It's only a question of who's going to make it. And of course, yeah, as a Swede, it was nice. It was Spotify. And they did certain specific things that made them unusually good at that point in time.
What was that?
Somebody would.
Yeah, but if you look at Spotify, I mean, there must have been tens of different companies trying to put up the same thing. Why did Spotify succeed? What was the sort of ingredients that make them successful?
Well, one obvious was that they were early ones.
Yeah.
I mean, when things fundamentally change, you suddenly go from being a winner by being the second to being the winner if you're the first. So there's a first mover advantage in all these changes. That was one reason. They were one of the early ones. And in their case, there were other specific technological issues. One that was extremely important was that when I pressed play, it played directly. And that is a technical thing. It was difficult to achieve that. I mean, downloading, it takes you like 20 seconds. But at Spotify, when you pressed play, it played directly. At that point in time, that was unique. And then they were clever business people. They knew how to play the game. Of course they did. I mean, where did they start? My own university. Beta invite to engineering students. A typical case to start a business like this, which is quite fun since, yeah, that's a special case on how they achieved that. But bear in mind, the first ones to streaming, who were they? Most of them were downloaders before. They didn't go to Spotify to get cheap music. They already had music for free. They did it because they wanted to have a better quality compared to piracy, not compared to vinyl records. And that's another typical example you see. Every time this happens, it starts in the corner of the business. It never starts with the established customers. So of course, it took me some years to become a Spotify person. It was my children.
Yeah. It's really, really interesting that they actually did it to get a better quality. Is the quality one of the determining factors there if you want to launch your own digital endeavor in some way or venture in that sense? That you should use the...
In the end it is. Not in the beginning, but in the end it is. Of course it is. But in the beginning, it's always bad. That's the funny thing. You should not look for good solutions. You should look for bad solutions. And for some strange reason, some people care about a bad solution in the beginning. Spotify was terrible in the beginning. Still, some people loved it for a certain reason. And then you just apply Moore's law to this, and then you would know that, yes, it was bad in the beginning, but it will become good in the end. And it became good extremely fast. Healthcare is a really good example of that at this moment. You know, all these bad quality solution where you connect a Skype conversation with a doctor. Of course it's bad compared to meeting a doctor, but that's not the point. It's a good solution in its making. And it's good enough for the people that use it. But in the long run, of course, it's about quality, always.
One area I think that you've also been looking into is about the business model itself. I mean, if you look at the Spotify example, it went actually from illegal downloads or buying records piece by piece to actually a subscription model. Was quite cheap. How do you look at the change of business models during this era? Was that also success factors that they can to launch this kind of service?
Oh yes. A colleague of mine have put words on this, Martin. I think he's done it in a good way. All these changes never happen because of technology. That's just what people think, but it's not technology. A better way to say it is a combination lock. You should see it as a combination lock where you need a couple of factors, and technology is just one. Technology is not enough. Another one is new actors. A third one is actually customer changing preferences. And the fourth one is business models. So yes, business models are extremely important here. When you get all these four, then you get the change. And at this moment, you can find a lot of industries where you could have one or two or three of these factors, and then it's only a question of, will we get the fourth one? So this finally happens. But the business model of streaming, yes, extremely important. Without that, we would not have streaming. No.
Because I think that we can see similar endeavors coming, that the business model itself is changing quite rapidly, and especially if you look at other digital companies such as Uber or Airbnb, that they sort of they change the whole game plan by actually challenging the business model itself, moving away from the assets, but rather the physical asset, but rather going into the digital sort of assets of data.
I mean, self-driving cars is a rather good case of that.
Yeah.
There's no point of owning a self-driving car. You subscribe on your car or you rent it, which is definitely part of the business model of a self-driving car. So you should get rid of your garage because you're not going to own the car. No, you're not. There's no point in it. There's absolutely no point of owning a car in the future. It's just costly. So yes, business models are changing, and to a lot of companies that are stuck with the old business model, this is radical. Of course it is. But I mean, if you look on streaming of music, it's more than streaming into the business model of Spotify. One extremely important part of it, that's, they know this. We all know it, but it's not mentioned. And that is, they unbundled the service. You don't buy an album anymore, you buy single songs, or actually you rent single songs. So you unbundle the service, which is obvious. Education here could be a great example. Why do universities still do education and exam? It's fundamentally crazy. It's bundled in a certain way. And services are unbundled fairly often when this process happens. The car industry is a rather good case of that. You know, you talk about the value chain. You should manufacture your engine, your gearbox, etc. Historically, that was not the case in the car industry. And it's not necessarily to take for granted it will be the case in the future either. So a business model is more than what you see towards how the company charged an end customer. It's also related to what's happening in the back of a business. Amazon is a great case of that. Books on Amazon, really great case. And the interesting part there is how their business model is related to authors. And that is fundamentally different. You know, when you self-publish a book on Amazon and you're an author, you could decide the price yourself up to a certain point. You have two choices. Either if you want to have 70% royalty or 35% royalty. But if you want to have 70% royalty, Amazon sets the end price. If you go for 35, you could decide the end price. That's not the way authors and publishing houses normally work. So business model is more than what we see as an invoice between the company and the end customers.
But
And
if
this
you
is
would,
important.
yeah,
This.
yeah. But if you would give some advice to executives or business leaders that are embarking on this digitalization journey, and give them some advice on this business model, how would they go about doing? How would they meet the new threats, the new digital companies that are sort of challenging this? How would you go about doing that?
I would. First, I would like to give them a very, very short story. Is that okay? It
Yeah,
will
please
take
do.
like 30
Please do.
seconds.
Yeah.
And then I would ask them a question. Imagine if we would have been a publishing house in the music industry when Spotify was founded, and we wanted to get rid of them at that point in time. And when we decided to get rid of them with the help of digital tools, and then we would put all the money we had, all the employees we had on digital projects to increase productivity. Would we have managed? No, it still would have happened. Imagine instead that we still would have get rid of Spotify and put all the money we had, all the people we had on business development with the help of all digital technology we could acquire. Would it have saved us? No, it still would have happened. What I'm trying to say is that digitalization, when it comes to productivity, is not the thing. Digitalization in terms of business development is neither the thing. The thing is, it's a fundamentally new world evolving. And you got to figure out how this new world will look before you even do anything at all. And that is possible to do, which people rarely believe in, because everyone walk around and say, whatever we know about future is that we know nothing about future. And I claim heavily, this is possible to figure out. And it's actually needed to figure out. So my question would be, do you seriously, if you run your business, do you seriously believe that the world that you're working in today will look the same or not? If you do believe that it's seriously going to continue to look the same, then my choice is continue doing what you're doing, bring in new technology, and continue to do what you've been doing the last 30, 40 years. Launch another productivity project, launch another business development project. Then this is not a big thing. But if you believe this to be happening, stop, don't move. You know, I wrote a book called that, Stop, Nobody Move, on Amazon, which is about all this. First, you have to figure out what is actually happening before you do anything at all. And most companies, when you look at them, they spend huge amounts of time on productivity. We've been doing that since the 1960s, right? Drones, VR, 3D printing, cloud services, iPhones, all that, new technology in order to increase productivity, meaning making things faster and cheaper. And this is something managers know how to do. They've known this for decades. But if they continue doing that, it still is not going to save them. That's my point. So they should stop doing what they're doing. You know, it's like a machine. Never try to mess with a machine unless you know how it works. If you mess with the machine, when you know it, if you don't know how it works, it's dangerous. And this is, music industry is a rather good case of that. Of course, record labels spent huge amounts of money, huge amounts of efforts trying to handle streaming. Still, EMI is gone. Why? Because they did exactly what I said. They continued using digital tools in order to increase productivity and do business development. They never sat down and figured out what's actually happening here. It's a new world. You cannot continue using old tools if you enter into a new world. Could I try a metaphor with that?
Yeah, please. We have a little more time, but
yeah,
please
okay. A small story. Playing chess. Imagine we play chess. Business leaders are extremely qualified in playing chess. But bear in mind, chess is a game that is defined. It's a certain amount of squares, a certain amount of pieces. Everyone agrees what winning is about. And they've been playing this game of chess for ages. They know how to play it. And on this chessboard, there are tools. One is called productivity. Another one is called business development. And that works fine, as long as this doesn't happen. Suddenly somebody pops up, takes away the game of chess and gives them a new game, and then says, good luck. And by the way, I don't know what the game is called. You will realize that in a couple of years, and it depends on how you play. There's no coincidence that things break down because of that. You need to figure out what the new game is going to be about. Then you will know what to do. And in average, you don't need to spend money on digital projects in order to fix this. What you mostly need is spend time on competence development. Because when there's a new game evolving, there are new competences needed. And that you need to fix. So it's not about doing one more digital project. And I say this simply because I don't know how many hundreds times I've been discussing this, where it still ends up with the question, do you think we should care about technology X? No, I don't. I think you should care about the new game. And my point is, you can actually figure out. 20 years ago, we could have figured out that streaming would become the end game. We could have. It's a lot about theory and analytics and all that, but we can, which is rather cool.
No, but I think
that's why I claim this will happen in healthcare and education and all that.
But I think this is a fantastic discussion and also insights to how the world works. And how these mega trends actually work. It's no point stopping it. You need to find a way to play with them rather than trying to stop them. And yeah.
Well, there have been some short historical times in history where we managed to stop the evolvement of technology. Yeah. The Luddite is one, right? Banning of the printing press in Paris was one.
Yeah.
But not in the long run, no.
No. Thank you so much, Henrik, for participating here. It's been a pleasure having you here. And I really like your views and insights about digitalization, especially that it's about understanding the end game and how to win in these new environments. That is not really clear, given a new chessboard or a new game to play that we don't really know how it works. So thank you so much, and I'm happy to, I hope that we can have a new discussion later on in another topic going forward. So thank you so much.
Sure.